The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to the Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast. My name is Mike. I'm here with Sam. Sam, first of all, happy birthday, and how are you doing?
I didn't expect you to do that. I am doing very well, Mike. Thank you very much. Yes, I share a birthday with Devin Booker, so we were both celebrating over the weekend. And yeah, happy to be back here after a perfect week for the Suns, a 4-0 week where we get to talk about what is currently statistically the best team in the NBA, so couldn't be better. No complaints.
Since we last recorded, the Suns beat the Clippers by 17, beat the Warriors by 29, beat the shorthanded Pelicans by 13, and beat the Rockets by 15. All wins. They are now 5-1, top of the Western Conference. They're probably close to the best record of the league, if not the best. One quick question. Do you know what their vibes per 36 is right now?
I don't know, but more importantly, it doesn't really matter. I mean, I guess the vibes are pretty good, though.
I'd say they're pretty good.
You know, I couldn't exactly put a number to it, but I'd have to say they're pretty high.
The amount of advanced
average for sure.
The amount of people that love advanced stats talking about vibes is at least a little bit funny. It's like they're like so anti-hooper mentality. They always make fun of, you know, guys like that ball don't stop guy, and then they talk about vibes for the Suns.
Well, I think what's particularly funny here to open the season, and I don't know if you have any greater observations about like the league as a whole that you wanted to save for later, but just like very briefly, it's not just that the Suns are once again awesome, which I guess like shouldn't shock anybody. Yeah. But it's also the fact that the West is just so damn weird.
It is weird
right now.
It's a weird start for the West, yeah. The East looks better right now.
I was joking. I mean, people have given me shit in the past for being afraid of the Clippers, and the Clippers are in disarray right now. I was joking on Twitter about it earlier today. Like, they look like a bad basketball team. The Warriors, you know, I'm not going to make any like profound statements on the state of the Warriors yet, but we did trounce them by 29 points this week. So
on their bench just looks bad. I mean, obviously they have Jordan Poole. But outside of that, they just don't really have. They're playing a lot of really young guys who are inexperienced.
And I mean, then you've got the Lakers. That, like, you know, that's a given shit show. Everyone kind of expected that to be a little bit worse, I think, but maybe not as worse as it has.
Losing their first 5 games, I think, was a surprise, regardless of how low you were on the Lakers.
And then, you know what, though? Like, they finally won a game last night, and who did they win against? They won against the Denver Nuggets, who look like one of the worst, not, you know, I think they're above water. I think they're above 500, but one of the worst defensive teams in the NBA so far.
Yeah.
Zach Lowe spinning in his grave over that one. So, I don't know. It's just like...
I didn't know Zach Lowe died.
I'm sorry.
We're recording this on Halloween, so... grave references are appropriate.
Figuratively, I'm saying he figuratively died. I'm not trying to spread misinformation here, literally. The point is, the West is here. The West is weird, sorry. And, it's just, you can't really talk about vibes with the Suns right now, at least not in any sort of negative way, because so many of these other teams are just taking the bullet for us to come out of the gate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the Warriors... star players, 2 of them, one punched the other. You know, like as far as vibes go, the Suns took a lot of heat for DeAndre in saying that he hadn't talked to Monty Williams as far as vibes go, and I think the Warriors, rightfully so, I think have earned some leeway when it comes to that, but I would say that teammates punching each other is worse as far as vibes go, and that seems to be translating to the court a little bit. Not that it's those guys' fault. I mean, Jordan Poole has been amazing if you watch the Warriors so far, but I do feel the need to say that just right off the bat so that we don't have to say this over and over again. Small sample size for anything that we talk about so far. And we all know that. This is just something we have to say. I don't want to have to say it every time I bring up a stat so far. But I wonder, and I think I've been thinking about it from my perspective because I probably pretty stupidly said under for the wins total on our over-under podcast, trying to be too clever. But have we seen enough by the Suns just in these 6 games to reset expectations on what we think they could be this season so far, or is it too early to say in your mind? Because I feel like, I'll say from my perspective, being that I picked under, already I'm like, I should have picked over.
You feel the pressure.
I should have just picked over.
I picked over, right?
Yeah, you did. You were the only one. Anymore. Yeah, me and Max were scared away by the bench in preseason, I think.
Yeah, I mean, look, and I still understand, like, I think to an extent, based on what we've seen, the bench right now is very much being carried. I guess maybe we should talk about this later.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Carried by, a figure. I'll tease it for you so that we don't have to. One particular figure who is having a resurgent season, I think, on the bench so far with his play. But no, I like just based on where I was, I don't think I have to reset anything. I think I always expected this team to continue to be good in the regular season. I guess what you could say maybe is that, like, I didn't know that they would come out of the gate this hot so soon. Like, maybe it would take a little bit of time in the wake of, we don't have Jay Crowder to rely on defensively anymore. We've got some new pieces on the bench. We didn't know exactly where DeAndre's headspace was, I guess, a couple weeks ago. Now I have absolutely no worries about that.
Right.
But I guess maybe I thought it would take some time to figure that stuff out. But no time wasted. I mean, it's not just the fact that they're 5-1, because obviously 6 games, like you said, it's not a lot of games in the grand scheme. But also just they're beating good teams.
And with the young guys, I mean, Chris Paul's, I'm not going to say that Chris Paul's being like bad or anything. He had 15 assists last night.
And 0 turnovers.
But he's not out there. Like, they're not doing the thing that they did in last season where Chris Paul shot 6 mid-range jumpers in a row in the fourth quarter to put every team away. It's everyone right now. It's all the young guys working together to win. And obviously, we should preface this by saying DeAndre Ayton is out for at least a week, as far as we know. So right now, the only team they played since then was, the second half of the Pelicans game. Shorthanded Pelicans, they basically finished that one off without DeAndre Ayton in for the majority of the game. And then he was out in the Rockets game, and then he'll be out. I think the next game is the Timberwolves, which will be interesting. Mm-hmm. We can talk about that a little bit later. But he'll definitely be out for that one and probably the next few games as well. So we'll see how that goes. But beyond that, just talking about the last 4 games in general, Mikal Bridges is playing well. Devin Booker, 29 points per game right now. He's averaging, which is one of the best in the NBA, of course. 6.8 free throw attempts, which is something that we have talked about a lot when it comes to Devin Booker. 5.5 assists per game, only 2.7 turnovers, and all of that combined with the 3-point shooting that he's shooting, which is not, the way it was last year, but looks really good so far, is adding up to a 63.3 true shooting percentage, which is insanely high for those who don't fully grasp that. And I think, as far as starts, it's the best start. I think they've called it the best start in Suns history when it comes to scoring, better than any start by Charles Barkley, better than any start by Amari Stoudemire or any other players in the past. He's doing more in the first 3 games, is when they let that stat out, than any player has done. And I think since then, he's continued it outside of one. Yeah, Pelicans game was a little rough for him, turnover-wise.
Was a little rough. I searched up that stat and posted it as well after 4 games. I haven't done it again since then. But actually, do you know who was like the second best start in Suns history after Booker, at least at that point?
Scoring-wise?
In terms of points? Yeah, because it wasn't Barkley,
Chambers?
it wasn't Amari, it wasn't even Tom Chambers. You'd be really surprised. I don't think you would get it. I'd be very surprised.
Chris.
It was not Marquise Chris. It was not Alec Peters. It was not Jamal Crawford. No, it was Charlie Scott.
Oh,
who made a few All-Star teams in the mid '70s for the Suns. Hall of Famer Charlie Scott, combo guard. I think mostly point guard.
So he was out there doing it without the 3-point line. Most likely
without the 3-point line. That is correct.
Wow.
He was doing it without the 3-point line. It was a much different era.
No defense. No defense in the 70s. That pretty famously. That's amazing. I would not have guessed that. But Devin Booker is out there just doing some amazing things so far. I think we talked about like the concept of Devin Booker's quote unquote MVP season, and we're not even saying necessarily that he's going to win MVP or anything if he continues this, because it doesn't really matter. It's all narrative based. It doesn't really matter. The point that I think you and I were trying to make with him putting it all together for a single season, like when you look back at his career, you're going to say, this is it. This was his best season. And so far, he's setting up nicely for that to continue. Like if he keeps playing the way he's playing, which obviously is likely, at least in some ways, unsustainable, but not really. If you watch how he's been playing, I think he can do some pretty amazing things this season.
I mean, if we look at just his stats right now, he's at 53% from the field. That's really high. Yeah. He's never been that high. Yeah. But he is attacking the basket more than we've seen, at least in the past few years. He's at 36% from deep, and he's at 85% from the free throw line. I don't think there's immediately an area there that feels unsustainable.
Both of those could go up.
The 3-point shooting and the free throw shooting, I mean, for sure, you pointed out to me last week, because I had forgotten that Book had a season, this was like 4 years ago now, but he had a year at 92% from the free throw line. So 85%, is it's not a poor season, but it's less than his career average for sure. That figure could continue to go up. So I don't know, just the way I'm watching him right now, like, I think there's this temptation to say, well, 29, 30 points per game, it's not sustainable. But I don't know, man. I mean, like, can you identify a particular portion of his game right now that actually feels like it's ripe for regression? Because I'm not sure I see one.
You know, there is, like, Devin Booker does go through some cold stretches at times, and I think
it's true.
The Pelicans in particular were, like, really suited to defend him well after playing the Suns in the playoffs, and that did kind of get in his head a little bit. But I think it's more likely scenarios like in the Pelicans game where Mikal Bridges was incredible. I think he had 27 points on like 11 or 12 shots or something, like a very low number of shots, which in some ways, just to go on a tangent here, in some ways I love when Mikal Bridges does that and he has 27 points, but like I kind of wish there were more games where he would have 27 points on like 20 field goal attempts.
Yeah, don't get me started.
just because it's like, well, then we know he's trying to do a little bit more. Of course, every once in a while he's going to have a game where he makes every shot and takes the same shots that he normally takes. But still a great game for him. But if other guys are just going off in that way, there will be games where Devin Booker doesn't need to score that much, and I think that in some ways could impact that overall points per game. It's not like the Mavs, for example, or the Trailblazers, I think, are another good example this year, where their star players in Luka and Damian Lillard kind of need to be really amazing for them to win, and both of them are capable of doing it. I think there could be games where Devin Booker can be afforded an off night a little bit more because of the supporting cast.
Quick tangent on the Mavs. I was looking up touch statistic data for the Suns based on 5 or 6 games into the season, I guess 6 games into the season, because I was looking at it this morning, just to see if I could gather any interesting insights on how the offensive profile of the team has changed. You know, a couple of things are different. Obviously, DeAndre Ayton will be in and out of the rotation. He'll miss the next few games, but also just how they're adapting to generally some young guys getting better, how they're adapting to Jay Crowder not being in the lineup, yada, yada. We can get to that in a little while. But I was also looking at the Mavs, and man, like Luka is averaging, he already was like the face of heliocentrism in the NBA, the guy who handles the ball the most. And except for maybe like, I don't know, maybe it's competitive between him and Trae Young. But this year, Trae actually, for his part, is handling the ball a lot less because they brought DeJounte Murray into the Atlanta Hawks offense. Right. Luka, meanwhile, he's averaging more touches than he was last year.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
I mean, you kind of have to.
I was just, it's insane what that team is doing, dude. It's just like a complete joke, a complete ridiculous excuse of like, for trying to build a successful basketball team. It
reminds me of the post Kevin Durant, OKC Thunder, Russell Westbrook narrative MVP season where he just handled the ball in every possession and racked up stats over and over and over and over again. I think Luka's better than Russell Westbrook even that season, so it'll be interesting to see how it turns out for them. But you know he's just going to rack up so many stats just because of the way that team is built. And I mean, if you're a gambler, maybe you can. That MVP is right there. I think he's favored, and he was favored before the season even started, and it's just obvious why.
I mean, it's just we're gonna have yet another year of this coming. Here we are talking about MVP narratives 6 games in, by the way.
That's where it starts. I mean, really, that's how it works.
But you can just see it now of he's going to have a 35-10-10 season, and the Mavs are going to be 44-38, and people are going to be arguing nonstop in March and April about if that's an MVP season or not. Because the only times in history that we've seen that type of individual season get rewarded, despite not winning that many games, it started with Russ in OKC, exactly like you were saying, and then it kind of got passed on, that legacy, to Jokic in the past couple years. But yeah, we'll see. Luka could set a whole new record there potentially. It's going to be interesting.
The best player on a mediocre team award, I think, is what it's what I called it.
It's kind of what it's becoming, and I don't know. We'll see, man. We'll see. But if Book, for his part, to bring it back to Phoenix Suns discourse, if he's averaging 36-6, and the Suns win 63 games or something, then I'm sure we'll be advocating for his side in that race.
And he'd have a good case. We'll if they're the best team in the league, which not to say that they would be, and he's averaging close to 30 points per game, I don't know that there would ever be a scenario where that's happened without winning an MVP. So I think he'd have a really good case. In that case, and I think for him, the determination to drive downhill, get to the rim, get fouled is really important. And I think it's clear that was something that either he came up with on his own or the coaching staff talked to him about before the season started, because it just looks like he's determined to do it. And I think that's going to be really important. But even beyond that, I think outside of the Pelicans game, where I think they just did a really good job converging every time he drove, his decision-making has been really great so far this season, whether it be making the right passes to open shooters, getting the ball to DeAndre Ayton on the roll, or just shooting the right shots in the scenarios where he has to either isolate or come around screens to shoot. And, that's going to be really important for the team going forward, especially as we build towards the playoffs, which is, of course, a year away, basically. But you have to watch and monitor the types of decision he makes when different types of defenses are thrown at him, because we've seen how the season has ended the last 2 seasons when it comes to just teams just trapping him over and over and over again. And on that note, let's talk about Mikal Bridges as a screener, because I think both of us have been talking about it for 2 years now, and they appear to be doing it a lot. I do want to just mention right away that Mikal Bridges is screening a lot in the pick and rolls, but mostly for some reason with Chris Paul handling the ball. I don't know if you noticed this too, Sam. Not a lot with Devin Booker so far. I don't know if there's a reason for that. I think I would like to see a little bit more with Devin Booker handling the ball there. But what it's resulted in is Mikal Bridges catching it in the middle of the floor and doing some really interesting things with the ball in the middle of the floor. Mid-range shots, getting to the rim, passing to shooters, lob passes. He had some passes to cutters that didn't always result in buckets, but if he's capable of passing to those cutters, that's really important, and he appears to be capable of it. And I think it's been a really fun wrinkle to see the Suns actually doing something that they're essentially, for those who watch them, they're essentially trying to turn him into Draymond Green with what Draymond Green does for the offense for the Warriors.
A more offensively, or no,
he can
not
shoot
more
from mid-range.
Offensively talented. Yes, a more skilled. No, not, you can't say that either. How
better
would I
scorer,
put this? Because a better scorer than Draymond Green. Because look,
he's
Draymond
not as good of a passer,
maker,
not as good. The other things is not there, but
Draymond as a decision maker is one of the smartest to do it ever. So I don't want to disrespect him, even though I don't particularly like the guy. But I don't want to disrespect his basketball pedigree. Mikal has more ways to put the ball in the basket, but I still think it's a great comparison that you make to draw between the two of them, because you can really see exactly what the Suns are trying to do when they put Mikal in these situations, leverage his decision making in a way that, when it's DeAndre Ayton setting that screen, when it's Bismack Biyombo setting that screen, even
Bismack had that 7-assist game last year. Don't forget.
Yeah, but no, in general, those guys are trying to get downhill. They're trying to catch. In DeAndre's case, he's just going straight up with it. In Busy's case, maybe he whips out the little 7-foot jump hook he has in the short roll. That
does
that
count
either
as a
it's
hook?
Good.
I don't know what to describe that shot as.
A push shot. It
looks like the ball weighs 100 pounds when he shoots it.
Yeah, it basically looks like a shot put.
Yeah.
But you know what I have noticed a couple times, especially in the past week? If he's like 4 feet away, like if he's right there but not quite close enough to just lay it in, and he tries that shot, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Once he gets out to like 7-8 foot range,
it's just 2 steps is all it takes, and it's like he can't do anything.
And it looks like he's shooting a bowling ball for sure. And in those cases, it does not work. Anyway, my point is, you've got those guys involved in the pick and roll. They're finishers, right? They're catching lobs, they're catching bounce passes, whatever. But like they're trying to score. When Mikal is in that position, the Suns are interested in leveraging his advanced ability, at least compared to those two, as a decision maker, and to put the ball on the floor again and to continue to create advantages, find cutters, find shooters, do whatever he has to do. You asked about why are they running that with mostly with Mikal paired up with Chris Paul and not with Booker. I don't know the answer to that. I'd be interested in maybe kind of continuing to watch for that pattern. They're progressing as well and see.
It's new. But we should say it's like new for the Suns to do this. I think they're going to do a lot more with it as the season progresses.
Yeah, and just like, philosophically, like what my hypothesis would be when you've got all 3 guys on the floor at once, if you've got a Chris Paul, if you've got Chris Paul and Mikal Bridges running screen, and then Mikal goes to the middle of the floor, or whether he sets a hard screen and makes contact, or if he slips, if he then catches in the short roll in the middle of the floor, you can run Devin Booker as a decoy first, which I think the Suns have done in some of those sets.
It's an expensive decoy, Coach. That's a famous Devin Booker quote.
It's an expensive decoy, but he's willing to do it. He's shown that he's like, this is why he's the most sacrificial superstar, as I've called him in the past, the most sacrificial superstar in the NBA. He's willing to do it, and he's also just so much more valuable as an off-ball threat than Chris Paul is, where if Booker's the on-ball guy, Bridges is setting that screen, and Chris Paul is like off to the side, I don't know, spotting up on the wing. Like it doesn't work in the same way. You don't have the same kind of value spaced out on the perimeter for Mikal Bridges as like options.
Yeah.
That would just be the hypothesis there,
I like it. I think that makes a lot of sense. First of all, Chris Paul's shooting 23% from 3 so far this season. So like,
Yeah, and I think we've got plenty of proof so far that Chris is, for all he's good at, is not exactly killing it as an off-ball threat.
I think he'll get better. I really do. So we can talk about him later if you want. But a couple more things on Mikal Bridges as a screener. Like, first of all, they hide defenders on Mikal Bridges. So often the worst defender on the floor is on Mikal. So that means if he's coming and being involved in the screen action, he's putting one of the worst defenders on the other team into that action, which I think is just smart, just from the perspective of picking on the pigeon, as the Suns called them in the playoffs previously. Just involving a player who might make a decision that benefits the Suns a little bit more. So, it just makes sense to use him as a screener. Another thing on that is they've done it a lot so far this season without DeAndre Ayton on the floor. I think I only found maybe 1 or 2 instances of using Mikal Bridges as a screener with DeAndre Ayton on the floor. I think both of them were in the Warriors game where Steph Curry was the one that was guarding Mikal Bridges. So you're just trying to involve Steph Curry in the action. I don't see any reason to not do it with DeAndre Ayton on the floor more. You just, it's okay to use DeAndre Ayton. First of all, DeAndre Ayton can stretch it out a little bit more if you need that mid-range shot, and even occasionally take a corner 3 if absolutely necessary. But as we've seen with Draymond Green, they run it with bigs on the floor pretty regularly. And what they do is he throws lobs. Draymond Green will throw a lob to a big that's just sitting in the dunker spot. And I think DeAndre Ayton will work fine with that, as they did with Biyombo.
I'm asking rhetorically, did you see the play? But I know you did because I saw you posted it.
Yeah.
Where they had Biz on the floor and Biz stood in the corner as Mikal came up to set the screen, and then he caught it in the middle of the floor. He threw that play, to be honest with you, that play only worked. It ended with a Cam Johnson corner 3. It kind of only worked because Houston's defense was just so out of sorts.
Biz cut.
And way too young and way too inexperienced. I know, but I'm saying like that particular play, I think they had Şengün back, and he was supposed to like he should have stepped up on Bridges, and in fact, I'm sure he would have done that. But like Jalen Green left his man instead, and then all of a sudden they're out of rotation and they were toast.
Well, see, that's the whole thing about it, right? It becomes, the Suns have an advantage because they're playing against 3 defenders. It becomes 4-on-3. So when Biz cuts from the corner, even if Şengün steps up, that's when the lob opens up for Biz. So as long as the cut is properly timed, I think it could still work even without a shooter.
Right. Yeah. No. I guess I just mean to say, it's one thing to do it against the Rockets. We'll see it against
absolutely
the Warriors in the rematch next time, right?
And they did it against the Clippers, and they did it against the Warriors too.
Weeks.
Like it did happen.
But yes, just that you saw Biz like positioned to shoot a corner 3, and then immediately as soon as like Mikal starts coming in, he sprints towards the dunker spot because he knows that's where he actually has value. But I appreciated the fact that the Suns were even willing to position the players in such a way, just because it's so unique. And I think you definitely could see maybe some opportunities opening up there for DeAndre Ayton to be playing the 5, and hey, maybe he gets a couple corner 3s out of it. I don't know if that's a shot that he's been working on a lot, but Mikal could come up, set the screen. DA could be in the corner. I'm sure he, would also have the temptation to sprint into the dunker spot, and like that's where he would be more comfortable. But the more spacing that Ayton can give you, I think the better this works as well. So we'll see how it works when he comes back.
Yeah, I mean, ideally it becomes a lob for DeAndre Ayton. That's just a perfect shot. It's like a guaranteed 2 points most of the time if he can get his hands on the ball. So, I just think it's really cool to see them experimenting with things this early. And on the other side of that, it's working. None of this stuff has looked ugly so far. They've, even when DeAndre Ayton was healthy and playing at the start of the season, they were giving him the ball more in the short roll as well, more with Devin Booker on the ball. So I'd like to see a little bit more of that. I think even, we'll talk about the bench in a little bit, but even as you start mixing up the different players on the floor, you can find ways to do it with 5 out, and which they did do in this last game against the Rockets when Torrey Craig came in because every big was in foul trouble. And there's just some interesting things that you can do in those scenarios when Mikal Bridges has so much space. And it just makes sense. And for another reason, because he's just so good at basketball. He has great feel for the game. So when he's catching it in the middle of the floor, there's no sense of panic in his game. He can attack the rim if he needs to. He can fake the pass if he needs to. He can swing it to the corner 3-point shooter. He had one great pass to Devin Booker, I believe, at the top of the wing on one of those plays. That was a pretty hard bounce pass around a defender. And like all of that is already in his game. You're not really necessarily teaching him something new for this to work. You're just sort of utilizing the skills that he already has. I want to ask you about something, though.
Okay, I want to bring up something, too.
Oh, do you have something on that? Go ahead, because I was going to change the subject.
Is your thing on Mikal?
No,
is your thing on Mikal? Okay, then we'll get to it maybe after the break, if that's okay. I want to spend just a few minutes here, because we said all the good things about Mikal. I think we need to nitpick one thing. He's got so many skills, and here he is, and currently as it stands today, he's averaging a career-high 15 points per game, career-high 71% true shooting. Awesome. He's playing the defense. He's doing the stuff. What do we have to do to get him to take more shots? Because I don't know if you saw the stat I posted earlier today. Out of the rotation players, like the full-time rotation players on the Suns, currently he ranks 7th in field goal attempts on a permanent basis, a per 36-minute basis specifically was what I posted. He's averaging fewer field goal attempts per 36 minutes than Landry Shamet, far fewer than Cam Johnson. He's at 9.7 attempts per 36 minutes. That's barely above Damian Lee, who is at 9.6 attempts per 36 minutes. Chris Paul also at 9.6 attempts per 36 minutes, and he's like the guy that we think of as he's not shooting. So here's Mikal Bridges. They're using him more as a screener. And in addition to all this, by the way, he's also shooting the fewest number of threes of his career, despite the fact that he's making so many of them when he actually does shoot. So they need him to be more involved offensively. They are involving him offensively in terms of leveraging his decision-making, his playmaking, but he could also, you just get the sense that he could be scoring so much more. You get the sense that he could be averaging 20 points per game right now with the way he's playing, and he's just not, because he's not taking those extra 3 or 4 shots that it seems to me, from my perspective, it would be easy for him to seize. What do you think about that so far with Mikal?
I think conceptually I agree with you. But watching the games, I just haven't really felt like there has been a lot of shots that he's been turning down. And I would say even more beyond that, I think he's taking some more contested threes than he has been in the past. So I agree with you. I think it's more of almost like a team thing than specifically Mikal Bridges thing. I think the team needs to find more ways to have him involved as far as using him as a more of a scorer. And maybe that means just because right now we're talking about using him as a screener. It's not happening a lot. Like it's 5 times a game, 4 or 5 times a game, maybe.
Yeah, it used to be like once a game, maybe. And now it's like 3 or 4.
Maybe it should be 10.
Is the type of thing
maybe it should be more than that.
I mean, that's the actual Draymond Green formula, right? Like Steph and Dre, at their peaks at least, didn't do that 3 times a game. They did it 10.
And it was all in the fourth quarter, or it's all in the end of the second quarter and end of the fourth quarter. So, I do think you're right. I do think you're right that as a team they need to find ways to get essentially their most efficient shooter right now, their most efficient scorer right now, more opportunities on the ball as far as shooting. But I just the way he's been used offensively, I have not been angry about. But scaling up more makes sense to me.
The same number of shots as Damian Lee. All due respect to Damian Lee, who hit the game winner in his son's debut, but you just look at that and there's something wrong.
Well, I mean,
there's something very wrong.
I do think that there is some element of when you start Draymond Greening Mikal Bridges, it means less shots, kind of, right? Because if he's the one screening, the defense is going to converge on him. He's not the one open in the corners anymore. He's the one creating those passes to the players open in the corners. Draymond Green doesn't get a lot of shots, and they're not going to leave him in the same way that they leave Draymond Green at the 3-point line. So, maybe, I don't know. It's interesting.
I think maybe, but kind of counterintuitively, I think that might not be the case because in general, a guy who handles the ball more is going to score more. Like, even if you're putting him in these situations where typically he's going to pass, a guy who's going to be your short roll playmaker might touch the ball. I'm just throwing out random numbers, right? But might touch the ball 50 times a game, whereas your corner shooter who just stands there might touch the ball 25 times a game. And if you just touch the ball more, like naturally there should be a scorer's mindset somewhere deep inside of Mikal Bridges that is going to see the openings. Like, maybe it only happens every 4th or every 5th time they run that play.
It's the rim. He's gotten to the rim quite a bit, opens up,
actually. And he gets to the rim, right. So, I don't know. It's like, it's no one thing with him. Like, it's not, and again, he's having a great season. Like, he's not doing anything bad. I just feel like we're leaving a lot on the table still where, he could shoot more threes. The transition, I think, has been really good. Like, he's always been an incredible transition player, and I think that's completely been up to the same standard so far this season. So it's just like a little bit more transition, maybe a little bit more scoring in the pick and roll, and I don't know. I just feel like we're leaving something on the table. I just want to broach the subject because I think other people are asking the same question.
If he stayed at 15 points a game, but then he was at like 4.2 assists per game, would you be happy in that case?
I mean, that's kind of what I've always... that's kind of like what I always expected a Mikal Bridges prime to look like.
It's more like Batum,
if we're talking about,
or
it's very Batum-esque. Yeah,
what did Marion average here? I'm gonna look that up because
Marion got up to 21.
Yeah, he got pretty high.
Marion got up to 21 in the season without Stoudemire.
21.2 points per game. Yeah.
In the seasons with Stoudemire, he was even still at like 19 or 20 a couple times, I think.
And that is quite a bit in his seasons that he was on Phoenix over the course of the entire time until he was traded. 18.6 points per game. Yeah, that's quite a bit. And it's just, he doesn't really have that same mentality as far as scoring.
But also, Marion got an automatic 6 points,
offensive rebounds
points every game on offensive rebounds. And Mikal that's not Mikal's game. I mean, he can get one.
The entire time, this is kind of crazy to look at his stats. The entire time he was here in Phoenix, he was averaging over 2 offensive rebounds per game, including his rookie year when he played 24 minutes per game. It's pretty wild. He's just so good at getting those offensive rebounds. I mean, Mikal's getting better at rebounds. I will say, like, you can see the intent for him to attack the glass a lot more this season.
Yeah, but Marion was the quickest. Yeah. He was the quickest second
absurdly athletic
leaper ever. I mean, I'm not that particular thing, especially like his second jump. I'm not sure if I've seen anyone better than Shawn Marion since he retired.
Let's take a quick break and come back and continue on some more things I want to ask you about. We'll be right back.
Maybe Jared Vanderbilt.
All right, before we get into the rest of what I want to talk about, I just want to quickly mention that both of us were out of town basically the last 3 weeks, and we're back in our normal basketball watching mode now. And that means that we can do games on playback. We can watch games with you guys. And I didn't want to say this at the end of the episode in case people missed it, so I'm just going to say it now. This Friday, the Suns are playing the Portland Trail Blazers. The plan is for Sam and I to watch that game on playback with you. For those who have never joined us for one of those, we're just watching the game with you. We're there as like secondary announcers to talk through the game. There's a chat that gets pretty lively. We would love it for you guys to join us for those. We've called it Friday with the fellas in the past. We try to do every Friday game, and that begins this Friday against the Portland Trail Blazers.
In case that sounds chaotic for anyone who's never used the platform, first of all, I highly, highly, highly encourage you guys to turn out for the playback streams. We used to make them exclusive for members of our Patreon, but this year they're entirely open to everyone. So as long as you can properly authenticate with some sort of cable subscription or League Pass subscription, you are good to go. But yeah, I highly encourage as many people to turn out as possible just because they were really fun last year. We called the Cam Johnson game winner versus the Knicks. That was one of our playback broadcasts last year and was probably definitely my favorite regular season moment of the year, I think. Yeah. Mike, it's safe to say that was super, super fun. But yeah, for anyone who's never used the platform before, in case it sounds kind of chaotic, there will be the normal broadcast announcers, and then you can also hear our voices over them, but there's kind of like an audio mixer thing that is controlled by the user as part of the user interface, where you can mute the original broadcasters or you can mute us if for whatever reason you wanted to. So you can kind of rearrange it your own way so that you hear only the parts and see only the parts that you want to see and hear. So it should work out. Yeah. But yeah, if you've never used it before, this Friday night will be a great time to start.
It's a good way to get incredibly Suns Homer actual analysis. That's actually analysis. Like, we try to actually, obviously we want the Suns to win, but we still provide some level of analysis. Sam, right now, the Suns have the fourth best defensive rating in the NBA. Their offense is second best, number one net rating, because they kind of pummeled some teams in this last week. They won every game by more than 10 points. I want to talk about the bench, but before we get to that, I want to ask you about the defense, because as we talked about in our preview episodes leading up to the season, the expectation was that the offense would get better, which, by the way, it has, and the defense would slip a little bit. So far, both have been top of the NBA. They're both incredibly good. I think the offense could hold. I think the Suns could still have one of the best offenses in the NBA, and we'll talk about how the bench could impact that in a second. But before we get to that, what do you think about the defense? Can the defense hold? Because I'm watching them play right now, and I'm like, they're still really good defensively, even without Jay Crowder so far. What do you think?
Well, what's interesting about it, so I guess my short answer to your question is yes, I think the defense can hold. I don't think it's going to look exactly like it does right now for the remainder of the season, though. And what I mean specifically by that, if you dig down into the defensive ratings, like the individual numbers so far, it's really been the bench they're the defensive. I mean, it may not look like this on every possession, you know what I mean? Like Mikal Bridges had an absolute masterclass performance locking up CJ McCollum the other night is one example that I would think of. But overall, like the guys with like an 80 defensive rating right now, it's like Jock Landale, Cam Payne. It's the bench guys. And I think a lot of that so far, they can continue to be good, especially if they continue to play with the type of energy that has really impressed me so far. I don't think they're going to continue to do that. But on the flip side, I think the starters, who mostly have good but maybe not elite defensive ratings so far, I think theirs could get better. So I think it'll even out somewhere in the middle, and and basically they'll continue to be pretty good.
Yeah, and I think so too, because I'm watching it thinking, I think there's some level of small sample size opponents that they're playing. Like if Kawhi Leonard was, I don't know what he's going to be this season, but if he was more like what we thought he was going to be, maybe that defensive rating wouldn't quite be the same. He came off the bench. Weird rotation things going on with the Clippers so far this season. And I thought they played really great defense against the Warriors, even with Cam Johnson on the floor, because they're so good offensively in their starting five. And I think the bench, like you said, the bench was still great in that game, and we'll talk about them in a second, but it's just something that feels kind of sustainable so far, which I don't know if it will be. Maybe I'm being overly optimistic about it. But I have been surprised with how good the defense has been. The offense, I think to some extent, the offense was what was shaky at first and then kind of clicked in after a few games.
I don't know. It's weird. Like, I do feel like, especially that bench unit, when they play Cam Payne, Landry Shamet, and Damian Lee together, which is something they've done a few times now, especially in the past week, as they start to, I guess, as Monty starts to gain more trust in those guys, it's like, I feel like they really are punching above their weight defensively a little bit. Like, they're getting stops, but how they're getting stops with such a lack of length, I guess you could say, especially kind of like once you get to that 2, 3, 4 position, some of those guys in that wing rotation.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive. Like,
they're so smart. They're so smart.
They are really smart. I mean, Cam, should we just talk about the bench?
Yeah, absolutely.
Transition here?
It's perfect transition, yeah.
Yeah, Cam Payne has been great.
So good.
For the past, really to start the season, I guess you could say, but particularly in the past few days. And it's good to see him, I guess it's good to see that Cam's confidence never waned and that he's continuing to play the specific brand of basketball that I think made him so successful in the first place. And also, like, I guess that just shows on both ends of the floor. Like, there have been a lot of times, the thing about Cam, he's not dominating every possession offensively in the most efficient way possible. He's not like Mikal Bridges to start the season, where he has like this absurd through the roof true shooting percentage. He's a little more streaky naturally, right? He has some games where he finishes well at the rim, and then he has other games where he turns it over a couple times and whatever. But what's mostly impressed me about Cam Payne to open up the season, when he struggles offensively, he's more than earning it back on the defensive end, harassing guys who are like much bigger than him, poking at balls, being really disruptive, racking up a lot of steals essentially. And just not allowing anyone to bully him on defense or even attempt to play him off the floor, even in those types of lineups like I was talking about, when he's sharing the court with other guards, other guys who have like a 6'4", 6'5" wingspan. He's just been really, really steady. And his energy has been crucial because he's the key to the bench right now.
Yep, he really is. And, we've joked so much about Dario Saric unlocking the bench or unlocking Cameron Payne, and it's clearly the other way around, except that Dario Saric isn't playing. And what I mean by that is Cameron Payne just sort of unlocks everything. He kind of, right now, the bench is playing really well. And that's kind of the thing that I wanted to talk about just in general. Jock Landale rocks. He's just really solid and really amazing. Biz has been a really great replacement. DeAndre Ayton in the starting five can do about 60% of what DeAndre Ayton does, but that 60% that he does really well. And that has been really nice for the Suns in the minutes he played against the Pelicans and the Rockets. We'll see how it works against a team like the Timberwolves coming up with really big lineups. But
don't pretend that you respect the Timberwolves. You're not allowed to do that.
Can we just talk? We'll talk about them in a second. Their schedule has been bizarre. They played the Spurs 3 times already in this, and the Thunder twice. And the other game that they played besides the Spurs 3 times and the Thunder twice was the Lakers. And they're like 4-3 in that stretch. And I know it's going to be complicated to work all those pieces together, the Timberwolves, but I can't imagine having that kind of cupcake schedule so far. I think they played the Jazz too. It's all just been a bizarre start for them so far, but we'll talk about them at the end of this podcast. All of what the bench has been doing so far works because Cameron Payne is playing well. If Cameron Payne is not playing well, it doesn't work. The whole bench needs a good offensive player, an engine to let it run. And right now it is working, and it is working because Cameron Payne is working. And, to Payne's credit too, it's not just what he's doing on the ball. You talked about defensively, but also when Devin Booker's on the floor, he's been a really good off-the-ball player, just with his catch and shoots or being that secondary playmaker that can do things in a pinch when the shot clock is running out. And I think if he continues to play well, first of all, the Suns will win. He's plus 33 on the season so far. They'll continue to win if he continues to play well, because the majority of the time he plays so far, they're outscoring their opponents. And even if they get outscored slightly with him on the floor, the starters will more than make up for that, I think, when they play in most cases. But the luxury that it provides James Jones to not have to panic trade Jay Crowder right now to fix the bench is actually kind of huge, because, right now we have Jay Crowder not playing $10 million of salary. We have Dario Saric not playing $10 million of salary. And to the extent that I am wondering if Dario Saric not playing is trade related, that has gone up. I'm wondering about that as well.
I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because I was thinking about asking you that, but then I forgot.
Yeah.
So I had that same exact thought.
There was two bigs in foul trouble, and he didn't even get on the floor.
Yeah. I mean, the Torrey Craig, they brought in Torrey Craig to play small ball because Ish is still dealing with back issues, too. So, Monty's options were really limited, and he still didn't play Dario last game. And, you have to wonder at that point, I don't know, is there something in the works that is close and we just don't know about it? It's possible.
But the fact that the bench has not been a train wreck means that the Suns can kind of hold on to that $20 million of salary that they have right now that they're not using, and try to hold out for, we talked about the Western Conference teams not starting great. That's good for the Suns. That's good for the Suns, not just that they can get some wins early, but also these teams will start panicking at some point. They will. And the Suns can use that as leverage, being that they have at least one good player in Jay Crowder that they're able to trade right now, and one asset in Dario Saric that's expiring that they could potentially use as well. And if the bench continues to play well, they can continue to hold out, and that is a nice luxury for James Jones to have. So shout out to Cam Payne, who's been playing really well.
Shout out to Dario Saric, too, by the way, who's not complaining about not playing.
Yeah, it's odd. It's very odd. I don't know what's happening. Maybe he's just bad now. It could just be as simple as that.
Practically speaking, is there any difference between the Dario Saric, the situation that Dario Saric finds himself faced with, and the situation that Jay Crowder finds himself?
It's the inverse of it, right? Yeah.
But both guys are expiring deals. Is Dario actually? Is he an expiring deal, or does he have 1 year left?
No, I believe he is. Yeah.
So both guys are expiring deals. They want money next season. They need to play. But one guy's there on the bench. He's still cheering people on, and the other guy just refuses to show up.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't need to shit on Jay too much, but it's just, kind of, I hadn't thought about the parallel between the two guys. And then, to be my typical self, here's my comment about it for the week that I think I made every week. You also have Landry Shamet's $10 million sitting there too. I actually think
he's been good.
In Landry's defense, I actually think he's been fine.
There was full all bench lineups in the last two games, which obviously in the Houston Rockets you can do that, and in the Pelicans short.
You know what he did?
But the full bench lineups worked in the last two games.
He actually had a really great chemistry, I noticed, with Jock. And by the way, do we have a nickname for Jock Landale yet?
Not really. I don't think so. Yeah, I mean, Jock is a great name. His name's Jock.
His name's Jock. I mean, we need to. You did one, you were talking about Jock. I don't really know.
Oh, you said Landale? Yeah, like Andale.
No, I was not thinking about that. I was thinking about what you did with the Jock Glendale. Jock
oh yeah,
I don't know. But
there's
I don't know
rumors that's what Suns players call him, Jock Scottsdale or something like that, or Jock Glendale.
Jock Glendale. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, Landry made some nice passes to Jock.
No, but actually, something you're talking about there.
A nickname for him.
There is somewhat of a Duncan Robinson, Bam Adebayo pitch back and forth between those two guys on DHOs that they sort of been working on the last few games with Landry Shamet. Obviously, it's a very light version of those players. Well, I don't know, maybe not Duncan Robinson, but some chemistry built with Jock Landale, who's a great screener, and Landry Shamet using those screens to get open, running around them, is things that we've been asking for with Landry Shamet because, it just didn't really work with, and maybe it's a speed of movement thing with JaVale McGee, but it didn't really work with JaVale McGee. And by the way, Landale just rocks. He's just so solid, constantly sprinting up and down the floor, great around the rim, good on offensive rebounds. This is another thing about the bench I think that's been kind of fun is that the combination of Jock Landale, Torrey Craig, and even Damian Lee chasing down rebounds off the bench has been really great. They've been good at offensive rebounding. And you just watch them all play. And I think something that I took for granted when thinking about the bench, and this is part of our Damian Lee conversation we had before the season, was like, what is he for? He's 30 years old and he has a lot of experience playing on good teams. And I think maybe I took that for granted, and just like how much stability that brings to guys on the bench, and just the locker room presence that he likely has as a result of that, and the lack of panic, the lack of fear that the Warriors probably helped instill in him. And I think you could see that when he plays on the floor. And he's been, just a smart, good player who's not great, but just doesn't really make a lot of mistakes. Kind of Etuan Moore-esque when, that we had with the Suns. Not the same kind of player, but,
better.
Yeah, better.
I think. Etuan, I wanted Etuan Moore to be good, but I think it just never really worked
he's
out
done
that way.
Now,
Well, it's kind of interesting with Damian Lee, as long as we're on the subject with him, right? Because, like, those first few games, mostly in preseason, I expected Josh Okogie to play this year, and he might still. He definitely might still. But so far, Josh Okogie is very plainly third string for the Suns.
Yeah.
Damian Lee is very plainly second string. And I guess that surprised me at first, that decision. But I think we underrate Lee's ability to just be so solid this
just
is
not be bad.
Just not be bad.
Not great, but not bad.
And, spacing, I think, both for Monty and James Jones this year as an emphasis, a point of emphasis. Just don't put guys on the floor who can't space a little bit, unless you really can't avoid it, in which case, you can throw Josh Okogie out there. But, Lee shoots his 35% from deep or whatever, and he's fine. He can hit, catch, and shoot threes. Perhaps even more importantly, you can run interesting sets when you have him and Landry on the floor at the same time, which they've done a couple times where, you're setting some sort of cross screen or down screen for one, and then a pin down on the other side of the floor at the same time. And you just you watch the two of them play together, and it's just a lot of movement on the basketball floor, on the basketball court, at once. And that's interesting, even on the possessions where it doesn't necessarily lead to anything, or if they miss the shot or whatever. It's just kind of conceptually interesting what you can do with those two guys. Mm-hmm. So, look, I'm holding steadfast to my opinion that Damian Lee could do the job of Landry Shamet for a fifth of the price, which still makes Landry expendable. That being said, I have no actual complaints about how either guy is playing right now. They've both been good.
I think I will just maintain that the bench looks great right now, and the fact that it's so predicated on how well Cameron Payne is playing so far is good and bad. In that it's good because he's playing well. It's bad because he played bad last season, and we have evidence that he played bad last season. So, my confidence level in what the bench is and what they can be this season is higher now than it was before, with a tinge of fear that maybe the floor falls out of under Cameron Payne at some point, although I feel much more confident in him being good than not good. Speaking of point guard panic, how worried are you? What level of panic are you at with Chris Paul currently shooting really badly from the floor?
Low. I still think it's low. It's nuanced though, like all things, right? So I think we've seen a couple examples already of Chris doing his thing in the mid-range, even late in games at critical points in the game, and you just watch him, he gets to a spot, gets the defense on his hip, and you're like, yeah, he's fine. I really think his mid-range shot is not going to go away. Yeah. I just can't think of any logical reason why it would. I think the only thing that it's reasonable maybe to worry about with him is, in order to make the Suns offense work this year, everyone else is handling the ball a little bit more, and Chris is handling the ball a little bit less, and he needs to be an off-ball threat, arguably, in some lineups. And, is that ever going to happen this season? I'm just not sure. That's mostly based on that I'm not sure we've seen the evidence for that ever in Chris Paul's career that he could be that off-ball threat. So I don't know. I guess like kind of my answer there overall is just I think the mid-range is going to regress back to where it usually is, which is to say really good. I think the 3-point percentage, this might not end up being his best season 3-point percentage-wise, but where he ultimately ends up, I couldn't say.
It's going to be higher than it is now, but 23.8%.
I mean, right now it's 24. It's going to be higher than 24. Yeah.
I think I agree. The reason I'm not panicking yet is because I think he's going to get better. I think he'll play better as the season progresses. And the other real reason is that everyone else is playing so well. With Chris Paul, when the Suns signed him, when the Suns traded for him, the idea that he was going to be the same Chris Paul was never in our minds, that he was just going to be as good as he was in 2021 the entire time he was on the Suns. No, we never thought that. Not you and I, at least. And so we knew that the Chris Paul regression would come at some point, and we've talked about how important it was that the rest of the players start to significantly improve in order for that to not impact the Suns in the worst possible ways. And so far, this is sort of the hashtag internal development season. It wasn't last season. It's this season so far. And if that continues, then I'm less concerned. Championship-wise, if the Suns don't make any major trades, obviously they're going to make minor trades as the season progresses. We know that for certain. But
one would hope.
Yeah, if they don't make any major trades, then he just has to play better as the playoffs come in order for the Suns to have any chance to win a championship as the season progresses. So that level of concern remains the same, which is what it was before the season started. But it'd be nice to see him get some more 3-point shots in at the very least. I think I agree with you in that the mid-range is going to come back, but 3-point shot wise, he shot 39% when he first got to the Suns. He shot 31% last year, down dramatically, and is shooting 24% this year. So there's some, evidence that maybe that's just getting worse as he gets older. So we'll see how it impacts him so far. Nice to see him still dishing, though, because he is absolutely still dishing, leading the league in assists so far this season. Still a valuable player on the Suns.
And creating those advantages, like even to create those passing lanes at his age with his limited burst, I guess you could say at this point, obviously with his height, it's always been super impressive that he can get to those spots at 5'11", 6 foot, whatever he is, 6 foot with shoes.
Yeah.
The fact that he's still doing it is amazing. I mean, 15 assists, 0 turnovers at his age, that's an accomplishment as well. Looking ahead.
Yes.
Do you want to look ahead here?
Let me read you the Timberwolves schedule so I get it right. And who they've played so far this season. Oklahoma City Thunder, they won that one. Lost to the Utah Jazz in overtime. Beat the Oklahoma City Thunder again. Then played the Spurs twice in a row. Won one of them. Beat the Lakers and then lost to the Spurs in the third time they played the Spurs. They've lost to the Spurs twice this season, and they lost to the Jazz in overtime.
Talk about hashtag internal development, by the way. Go look at the San Antonio Spurs and the internal... they're winning games because of internal development over there. I think both Keldon Johnson and Devin Vassell are averaging like 20 points per game to open the year.
Yeah. But the Timberwolves are 4-3 right now. And their wins are OKC, Spurs, and Lakers. What a weird season for them so far. And now the Suns are playing against them coming up. The Suns are, without question, the first good team that they're going to play so far this season. Quibble about whether or not the Jazz are good on your own. They're not. They're just playing above their heads right now. The Suns are good, and the Timberwolves are playing against the Suns on Tuesday. This is not to say that the Suns are guaranteed to beat the Timberwolves. I have no idea what that's going to look like. It's such a weird team to play, and basketball is so much about matchups that I just find that matchup, in particular without DeAndre Ayton, to be really interesting for the Suns and really interesting for the Timberwolves. How are the Suns going to play this? Are they going to play extended minutes with Jock trying to stretch Gobert out to that 3-point line? And what it's going to look like. What do you think so far about the Timberwolves in that matchup?
Who guards Cat? Cam Johnson?
Yeah, I guess it has to be.
Yeah, Or are we putting Cam Johnson on Gobert?
Oh, that's interesting.
And then Jock
or Biyombo
or Biz.
It's probably Biyombo.
Or Biz.
Maybe
it's probably Biz. It's probably Biz goes.
Is this
on
the
Cat,
game
right?
that you start Jock though? Maybe it should be.
Is this the game that you start Jock and Biz? I wouldn't put it. For the record, I wouldn't do that. But I wouldn't put it past Monty to try.
And Dario Saric just sits on the bench, going, "Why won't I play?" As Torrey Craig
kind of funny
plays.
I don't know, man. I don't think this is going to be an easy game at all. I still have some level of faith in.
I honestly don't know how to judge what the Wolves are so far this season with how weird their schedule has been, and the Jazz playing really well so far. And they could be 5-2 if they just beat the Jazz in overtime, and then you're looking at them a little differently.
And also, just talk about a real challenge here for the Suns' perimeter defenders a little bit, because in Ant at this point, I think he wasn't this last year quite yet, or maybe a couple years ago, but now you're talking about a player who really just does have the potential to explode for 40. And it's not going to happen every night by any means, but it could happen, once a fortnight, and you don't want to be on the wrong end of that. And
that's how you
lose.
Get
Get one of those performances. Yeah, I mean, they get one of those performances from him, I guess the thing about the Wolves is they don't look like a cohesive product yet, but they just have so much darn talent on paper that you don't want to count them out in any game. Certainly not this one. So,
I think teams like that made dramatic changes to their roster, it clicks every once in a while. And, it doesn't click all the time, but it clicks every once in a while, and we'll see how it goes. It's a good way to put it. But the Suns are entering that game 5-1 the next game against the Trailblazers. They play the Trailblazers back-to-back Friday and Saturday in a weird...
Who will be without Damian Lillard, by the way.
Oh, he'll still be out by then.
Yes.
Okay,
should be, at least I think.
Not quite the same revenge game. The Suns only have one loss this season, and it was overtime to the Trailblazers. So it'll be an opportunity for them to get revenge for that one loss. And who knows, they could end this week with a pretty amazing record after, it'll be 9 games. So far, so good for the Suns this season. You got anything else to add, Sam?
I don't think so. Just reiterating, join us on Playback Friday night. Really excited. Really sorry in one sense that we haven't been able to do it to open up the season, because I know so many of you guys like it, but we're going to try and make it up now and start doing around one of them a week.
Yeah.
So come and join us. Have some fun.
I'm also really excited to do that. I think it'll be really fun. And thank you, everyone, for listening. If you'd like to join our Patreon, you can join our Patreon, patreon.com/thetimeline. We have a Discord. We all chat in that Discord now that I'm back in town. Back to regular weekly episodes on usually midweek, Wednesday, Thursday, for the Overtime Line episodes on the Patreon. Thank you guys for listening, and we will be back very soon.
For over a century, Johnny Walker has shared its bold spirit with the game of golf. Now, crafted with Devereaux Golf, Johnny Walker introduces the Johnny Walker Blue Label-inspired Sunday Golf Bag, elevating the game with sleek design, Blue Label hues, and refined gold accents. Celebrate your hole-in-one with a premium Sunday bag crafted by Devereaux Golf. Submit proof of your achievement to johnnywalker.com/blue-in-1. Please drink responsibly.